All right, all right, all right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, brothers and sisters all over the world. Kakas and dadas and kakas. Habari za Sabui, Habari za Mchana, Habari za Gioni. Brothers and sisters all over the world. The name of this channel is The African Times, and I'm Thomas. All right, welcome back, everybody. I am talking to everybody, each and every one of you all over the world. You. All right. Today, in this broadcast, we're going to start a series of what we call Getting to Know. And in this series, the first series, we're going to do Getting to Know Africa. It's a very important thing for people who look like me and you to get to know Africa. I know that there's a great deal of controversy over whether or not we are Africans or are we from this part of the world or from that part of the world. And it's understandable, no qualms with that. The one thing that cannot be disputed is that, as I've told you many times, no matter what part of the world I go to and there are people who look like me and you, the rest of the world, when they see us, they see one person, one people. And even among ourselves, we can't distinguish to say this one's this and this one's that. And if you are able to make some slight determination as to whether this one looks like they're from this part of the world or that part of the world, then you have to use some logic and reason and understand that if you want to separate and divide people that look like me and you, even with slight variations, if you want to separate and divide the people in the various small groups or contingencies, then you're putting yourself at risk and you're putting our children at risk, because the world we live in practices group politics, group economics, and group warfare. And those particular people who are dominating the world today, they don't look like me and you. And while they may be from different areas and different groups, and they call themselves by different names, they understand they act in as one group against people that look like me and you. And if we're unable to understand that we must come together politically, socially, economically, then they'll destroy us as they have, and we'll remain in this position until they annihilate us and eliminate us from the earth, which they've already done with groups of people. So this is why, for me, and I hope that you consider the understanding that we all are one people. And the name of the continent of Africa, whether it was derived from another human being who named it something else, or whether it was from the people who were living on the land, many things, Akibalan, Africanus, or what have you, or the land of the blacks, whatever. The point is the particular landmass where 1.3, 1.4 billion people occupy that space is land full of rich resources that will be taken from us if we continue to divide ourselves and say, I'm this and I'm that and I'm that and I'm this, because you will not have the strength and power and organization to defend yourself against those people who want the very assets and resources that are on that land that you occupy. So this is the very serious nature of what we're talking about. And that means in order to develop that understanding and create that kind of consciousness, we need to get to know Africa. We need to know our motherland. So, and that's what this series is intended to do, is to introduce us, the people that look like us, to our land, Africa. And again, Africa is the name commonly used among us today so that we can recognize what area on the earth that we're talking about. Later, we can get into original names, things of that nature, and that would be good to know what our people called themselves, called their land, and so forth. Those are good things. Just keeping in mind the context of domination and power. When a group is in power and dominating a particular area or group of people, they oftentimes distort history so that when you research and learn, you learn in such a way that maintains their dominance and power. So we have to understand that and keep that context in mind as we collect information. Keep our eyes and ears open and be conscious of that fact. Okay, so in this first series, again, we're going to talk about Africa, the continent in general. So let's get started. Africa is a continent, not one country, though there are many of us who would like it to be one country. I'm one of those people. And when I mean country, I don't mean in the sense that you have France or Germany or United States of America or those things. What I mean is just one people who share similar culture and similar ideas. As it stands right now, Africa is made up of what is, I think, 54 countries. Okay, 54 geographical borders that denote land masses occupied and governed by 54 different groups of people. Okay, and those 54 different groups of people, each group has their own culture, their own ideas and values and ways of living, their own rules, regulations, and laws. Okay, so that exists. That's what Africa is. Now, Africa is a very large continent. It's a very large. It's the second. Now, and again, let me just point out, these are things that are being reported. I don't have a plane to fly over the earth and look and see the landmass. And this is important to understand. Neither do you. Some of us are fortunate enough to have maybe work in that field and be able to do that. But the reason this is significant is, as I just explained to you, those in power, when you're in power and you have dominance over areas of people activity, one of which is education, then you can distort information so that, again, that information is put out and put forth in such a way that maintains your superiority and your dominance. And this is not something that a map is exempt from. When I tell you that Africa is reported as being the second largest continent in the world, when you look at the map, the many maps that are available, it doesn't show Africa in that way, and that's because people who invented the maps, who print them, and they're using a particular type of map, one that makes their areas and their locations the center of the world, as if their areas are the more dominant. But so let's talk about the size again of Africa, second largest continent, and if that's the case, being the second largest continent in the world, I want you to understand. I'm gonna give you some kind of way to look at it to see how big Africa is. Africa is so large that you can put the United States of America, China, India, Japan, France, England. You can put all of them in Africa, all at the same time, and many other European countries. You can put them all on the land mass of Africa. They can all fit in there. That's how big Africa is, okay? Now, it's reported in various publications that Africa has 1.3 billion people, 1.2 billion people, all the way up to 1.4 billion people. That's what's being reported. I can tell you from personal experience, I've been here now a couple of years, and during this time I've seen Tanzania conduct Tanzania conduct a census. So those things are taking place so that Africans themselves can give a clearer picture of what their numbers are. But 1.3, 1.4 billion people is what is generally reported. Now, remember, because the people who are in control right now, currently, they refer to us in America, people that look like me and you, as minorities. By no means are we the minority in the world. By no means. I just told you it's the second largest landmass, and the populations of Africa, in the sense of just those residing on the continent, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 billion. India, 1.3 billion. These kind of numbers that are reported. China, 1.3, 1.3 billion. But the W's and people like that, very, very small numbers. No numbers like that. No numbers like that at all. Even in America, United States of America, I think it's like they report 350, 370 million people. Okay. 50 million of them are people that look like me and you, added to the numbers of Africa. Okay? So understand that Africa is a huge, huge continent, which means that there is land available, and land available for many purposes, not only just to live, but that land being so large means that there are vast amounts of resources, both tapped and untapped. And this is why you have historically these groups that are currently in power today who have come over here and basically did what is called colonization. In other words, those 54 countries here are not 54 countries that were developed and created by Africans of free choice and free nature. There were periods in time where the groups of what are commonly called invaders came into Africa. Yes, the slave trade existed, and there are people who are disputing whether it existed or not. And I'll give you my take quickly on that, just to let you know. It really doesn't matter whether it existed or not. It's not the point. The point is that we're dominated now, and it's clear and obvious among all people that look like me and you all over the world. How that occurred, whether or not that was the result of packing African people up and moving them over to different parts of the world to perform free labor, or whether or not the people were already there and the invaders came there and invaded and dominated and put the people under those slave conditions. It doesn't matter which transfer. It doesn't matter. You can look clearly and see that today black African people are all over the world, in every part of the world, and they face the same social, political, economic situation. And it's not very good. And it's not any fault of their own, other than the fact that we were conquered. And that's clear. It's obvious. We're conquered now. It's clear. I personally can tell you, from living and being alive just like you, and you, that the things I experienced living in America, they were not of my choosing. I would prefer them to be a different way. I wouldn't prefer the discrimination that I experienced, the degradation that I experienced dealing with people who don't look like me, the W's. I wouldn't prefer that. That means that I didn't create it. And I would like to change it, but I don't have the power as an individual to change it. In groups, though, groups of us who understand and have the same conscience with a unified, measurable plan of action, it can be done. So again, Africa is very large, 54 countries that have been created and developed, not of their own African choosing. But back in the history, I think that generally, and I'm speaking generally so you understand, I don't want to get bogged down in the facts and details. We can go in more into that as you research and learn. You can Google different things. And remember, when you Google, that information comes up. Google is a company owned and run by people who don't look like us. So there's going to be a certain amount of bias in how information is presented to you, okay, which requires digging and detailed research. But for the most part, you can make some general assessments because it's clear you're living. You can see in history the groups that dominated and colonized Africa, various European groups, they had conferences. One I think of which is the Berlin Conference, and there are many others during periods of time, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. They met, decided what they were going to do, how they were going to divide the land up, what's the best way to maintain dominance and control of the land once it's divided. And when I say divided, I don't mean divided just for the purpose of helping Africans. No, they divided it up saying, I'm going to own this part, you can own that part. I'm talking about W's, Europeans. It's in their history. They openly tell you. Even the Africans who live here, they know. So they divided up the land, made borders, even had the country named after themselves in some cases. Rhodesia, named after Cecil Rhodes as an example. And that now I think is Zimbabwe. But again, I want you to understand, don't lose yourself in the details. Understand conceptually and contextually what has happened. You have different names of countries that came about as a result of, man, I'm sorry, I can't believe how many flies there are. So different names of countries that came about as a result of which particular European country colonized it, which person was in charge or president or country at the time, you know. So I just wanted you to get a general understanding of how big Africa is. Now, Africa has many of the world's resources, many of them. Let's see if we can look here and see if they can give us some example. I'm going to see what I can type in here. Hold on one second. Okay, yeah, so let's take a look at what is written about Africa. It's just simple Google search, and you guys can check that out. But there are other more detailed sources. But in some cases, for you to get a general understanding of the continent, it's not necessary. So we're just going to give you a general overview here. Africa has like 40% of the world's gold, and up to 90%. Let's see what it says here. Up to 90% of its chromium. I think that's chromium. And it also has 90% of the world's platinum. Very important. I'm sure these minerals, these resources are used economically for business, and this is why countries are scrambling to convince you and me that Africa is poor, that we're not Africans, we're something else. Because if you're something else, then you won't fight for your own motherland. You'd rather fight for somebody else's motherland who are dominating your motherland and taking your resources. Now, it's also being reported that Africa has the largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium. Now, I like that uranium. I think it has something to do with building some things to help you defend yourself against these people. And that's good. That's something we should be happy about, particularly if that is something that would provide safety and security for our children. I just, we cannot not bring these things into our consciousness, because these people will dominate you if you don't have the means to protect yourself. So that's why I mention these things. Okay, so again, it says here the largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium. This is one of the first things that come up in the world. It's the largest in the world. Yet I hear people, I remember I was living in America, I had a brother tell me Africa is just so poor. And I remember thinking, I heard someone say many years ago, you don't rob poor people. You can't, you don't steal from people who don't have anything to steal. You steal from people who have something that you want. So it goes on. It holds, talking about Africa, 65% of the world's arable land. 65% of the world's arable land. 65%. It's over half. Do you understand? Over half of the earth where people can live. And 10% of the planet's, what is that? Internal renewable freshwater source. Now, let me just say something. 10% of the world's water, fresh water, 10%. Don't you need water to survive? Yes, you do. 10%. Now, keep in mind, I really want people to understand. I told you the context. This is coming from these people's resource. These numbers could be inflated. When it comes to good things, and that deal with good things with people that look like me and you, black African people, they tend to be very reserved in saying good things about us. And that's putting it nicely. They don't want to say any good thing about us, what we can do, what we have done, what we may be able to do in the future. They don't want to do that. So even with these numbers, these things could be 20%, 30%. We don't know. Okay? We have to organize ourselves as a society, which is why we have to come together in such a way that we develop the institutions to do our own research. And we have them. I'm not saying we don't, but they have to be developed to be considered competitive and dominant in the world, like we once were in education. All right, so now keep in mind, I was just talking to you about the resources. So vast amounts of resources. And again, if you just consider the fact that they're telling you 65% of the land, the arable land, and how large it is, then you know that there are many resources that have been tapped and many that have not been tapped, which means we have rich resources. And don't let someone convince you and change your mind to think that this is not yours, because they're coming here. And I told you in earlier videos, they're going to be coming. And if you haven't done what you were supposed to do, when they get here and they finish, you will look up and they will be telling you, no, this is mine. I own it. Here's my bill of sale. And they will own all of your own land and put you off your own land. They've done it. This is their history. They've gotten rid of populations of people. Whole groups and groups of people. Okay? All right, now, let me just check out one other fact. Hold on one second. I want to look at something because I don't remember and I want to kind of get it clear. But I believe what it is Africa also is the home to the world's, I think it's either the world's largest or longest river, the Nile, and also I think either the highest mountain or the tallest mountain or the second tallest. So let's take a look, see what they say. Hold on one second. Okay, all right. So yeah, right here in Tanzania, where I am now, the tallest freestanding mountain, meaning it's not a part of a group of mountains, just one mountain, I believe is what they're saying. One mountain, tallest in the world, Mount Kilimanjaro here in Tanzania. You guys should come and see it. I haven't seen it yet, but I think I'm gonna go like on a little trip and show you. Here, here, tallest in the world. Now, the other thing, the River Nile. You hear about it when you guys, every Easter they roll out the Moses story. You know, NBC, Charlton Heston, all this, APC, whatever. They roll out these stories, and you hear about the River Nile. And it's a great, great river. Historically, there may even be some significance in terms of the origins of man and its relation, man and woman, the origins of people and their relationship to the Nile. It's good information to look up. But anyway, the Nile, it's been reported and argued by many sources that the Nile is the longest river in the world. Although, like I told you, they don't really want anything to be like, oh, Africa is the best. They don't want that. So let's see how they kind of word it here when you look it up, longest river or whatever in the world. So it says here, the Nile is a major north-flowing river in northeastern Africa. I'm in East Africa, Tanzania, East Africa. It flows into the Mediterranean Sea. The Nile is the longest river in Africa and has historically been considered the longest river in the world. Though, here's the though this has been contested by research suggesting that the Amazon River is slightly longer. Okay. Now, again, it doesn't really matter which one is longer, but I'm just giving you an overview of what Africa is. It's not just jungles and lions and tigers and bears. No, it's much, much, much more. And this is why these people are fighting to take it over, to own it, away from me and you and our children and our future and our prosperity. So they're going to tell you, no, you're not an African person. You're a Brazilian person, or you're a French person, or you're an English person. It's just amazing to me. Even my name is very curious, because I look at this kind of big push here. I see it. I came here. You have many people with African names, beautiful names. But then you have many people here, black African people, and they have English names, very English names, like me, Thomas. And then it dawns on me, what kind of mental training, what kind of mental conditioning, what kind of mental mind control can be put on a people so that the people totally admire another people's culture over their own, and would have a feeling that another group's names are more precious, more desirable than names historically associated with them and people that look like them. It's very, very important. Thomas. I think about the different groups, the Asians, I don't know, forgive me, and I want you guys to help me, Middle Eastern, Arabic, what have you. People of that group. The Asians, again, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, the Asians. How many of them, is there a big push in their countries to change their names to John, Peter, Michael, and to consider those good Christian names? Good Christian names. As if that those names are superior, more desirable than the names of your own culture. Now, I am mature and living and been here. I understand that when you can convince some people to remove their own names and choose the names associated with the language of another people, you can eventually just take that whole language away from the people. And then they lose their language. You use the language, it's a major part of losing your culture. And this is what we see happening with us, people that look like me and you. And once you lose your language, your culture, you lose that, then you begin to accept other people's ideas about life and philosophy and how to look at things. And if those things that they are trying to put forth are against you, then you'll hate yourself. You'll hate the way you look, the way you think, the way you talk, the way you dress. You'll hate the aspects of your society. And before you know it, you'll be dominated, enslaved, and exterminated. So this is what we're up against. So again, just giving you some brief facts about the size of Africa. The fact that Africa is a very rich country, rich place, full of resources, divided up into 54 countries. But really, it's one big group of people. Differences among people don't make you a different person. You see a zebra. This zebra stripes different from the other zebra stripes. They don't all have the same stripes, but they're still what? They're all zebras, right? Okay, so get to that fact quickly, because we need our people to be organized and unified. All right, I'm going to have to get off, but we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to go into a little bit more detail. That's Africa as a whole. You need to know Africa as a whole. Huge continent. 54 different countries with many different languages among the people. There are some common languages that not everyone knows, but that large groups of pockets speak common language, so they communicate with one another. And you can kind of piece together from the common language certain portions that fit more individual languages, and we have to overcome that, because that's a barrier. If people were to come and attack the continent, you need to have a communication system, an ability to communicate together as a group so that you can come together quickly and defend yourself. Now, there is no one governing body over all of the continent of Africa. There's an effort to organize Africa in such a way that there is a governing body, and that's called AU, the African Union. But the African Union is an organization made up of all the different countries in Africa that are coming together as independent countries, maintaining their independent sovereignty, independent country status, and they meet in places and discuss issues relevant to the continent of Africa as a whole, but not one governing body. Okay, and back when this organization, the African Union, originated, I think it was called the OAU, Organization of African Unity. There were people, proponents of making Africa one country, and me, I'm in favor of that. But it can be done in ways that still allow different groups to be in charge of themselves and whatnot, without without threatening the overall continental unity and its ability to operate and function as one unit to protect us. So, again, that current body is the African Union. And we'll talk more about those things as we get into uh, the political aspect of Africa, the financial aspects of Africa. And we're also going to go into each particular country. The first one we'll probably be doing, I'm going to take them in alphabetical order, and I think that Algeria is the first one. So look forward to it. We'll get to know that. So remember, Africa, your motherland, people that look like me and you, and the whole globe, the whole earth. Okay, look up Sheikh Anta Diop's, I think it's Origin of Man or something like that. It's a video he did. Sheikh Anta Diop was a very famous scientist, I think, from Senegal. Look up. He does a really wonderful video presentation on the origin of man. You find it interesting. It's just information to consider. All right. This has been a broadcast, I think, with title Getting to Know. Getting to Know Africa. All right. You guys take care. Have a good day. Uhuru. Uhuru. Uhuru.